Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel, thank you. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Battle Through the Heavens based on novel. So let's start. The little fairy doctor and Medusa were also somewhat caught off guard by this sudden all-out attack by Xiao Yan. They only had the time to circulate their Do Chi to the surface of their body at this critical moment, forming a powerful Do Chi defense on the outside of their bodies. That dark black blood glow suddenly shot over just as their defenses were established. However, it unexpectedly turned when it was just about to strike their bodies. It immediately rushed over to Xiao Yan by their sides. The target of this attack by Xiao Yan was not actually the little fairy doctor, but Xiao Yan. The sudden arrival of this black light caused Xiao Yan to be momentarily absent-minded. The skin on his head involuntarily turned a little numb, as he sensed the frightening energy contained within the black light. The Do Chi in his body appeared to activate at this critical moment. It involuntarily broke free and rose to the surface of his body. That black glow suddenly reached its target just as the Do Chi surged out. It contained a fishy scent that caused one to puke as it violently shot into Xiao Yan's protective Do Chi. The hot jade-green Do Chi seemed to be like snow that met boiling oil when the two collided. It instantly scattered. In a breath's time, the protective Do Chi was forcefully torn apart by the black glow, and violently struck Xiao Yan's body in an unceremonial manner. The collision did not result in any force. However, the black light seemed to be like a liquid as it instantly disappeared into Xiao Yan's skin. Only a mere second passed by the time the black glow broke the protective Do Chi and entered Xiao Yan's body. By the time Xiao Yan had recovered, the black glow had already entered his body. A thumb-sized black spot remained at the spot where it entered his skin. The first thing that Xiao Yan did after recovering was touch the black spot on his chest with his hand. He lowered his head only to be stunned. He discovered that the black spot was swiftly spreading by threads of tiny black lines. The places that these black lines spread to were the location of some important acupuncture points and veins. Xiao Yan's face immediately changed upon seeing this scene. He suddenly raised his head and yelled at Xiao Yan, "What have you done?" The current Xiao Yan appeared to have had his age doubled after having spat out that black light. The white hair on his head began to fall out. His brows were piled together, appearing like massive gullies. Despite having turned into this state, the vicious, cold laughter in his turbid eyes became denser. "Brat, you have killed so many people from my 10,000 scorpion gate. How can the old me let you off?" Medusa and the little fairy doctor's faces suddenly changed upon seeing the viciousness on Xiao Yan's face. Their bodies flashed and they appeared beside Xiao Yan before hurrying to take a look. "Are you all right?" Medusa's delicate hand rubbed all over Xiao Yan's body. She inquired with a somewhat anxious voice. That frightening strike from Xiao Yan earlier was definitely not just putting up an appearance. Given Xiao Yan's strength, his fate after being struck by it would not be anything good. Xiao Yan also knit his brows. His mind swiftly observed the interior of his body, but did not discover anything wrong. The little fairy doctor's pretty face was extremely solemn. Her gaze swept over Xiao Yan's body and appeared to have discovered something. She immediately pulled apart Xiao Yan's robes with her hand. The strange black spot with many black lines spreading from it appeared in the eyes of the three people. "What is this?" Medusa hurriedly asked. She felt startled when she saw this thing. The little fairy doctor's eyes stared intently at this strange black spot. She inhaled a deep breath of air, clenched her silver teeth and said, "It is actually the demon poison spot. This old bastard is really ruthless." "Demon poison spot? What is that?" Medusa and Ziyang by the side hurriedly asked, when they heard what she said. "A vicious skill for those that practice poison Do Chi within the Chuyun Empire. It is able to gather all of one's poison Do Chi together and insert it into an enemy's body. Finally, it will form a black spot. This black spot will continue to unleash poison lines. When these poison lines cover every single acupuncture point, the chi parts in the body of the person who was struck by it will swiftly fester. Finally, that person will suffer an endless amount of pain and slowly die." The little fairy doctor's voice was filled with a fury. However, once one uses this skill, the person who used it will lose all of their Do Chi and become a useless person. The expression of Xiao Yan's three-men group suddenly changed upon hearing the little fairy doctor's words. The dou qi within the latter's body swiftly surged out. After which, his mind swept over every single part of his body. However, he was still unable to discover just where that black spot was located. How can it be resolved? Medusa's face was so gloomy that it was frightening. The space around her began to fluctuate intensely at this moment. Clearly, her heart was extremely volatile. If it was an ordinary Do Wang, or even a Do Huang who used this demon poison spot, I would have been able to undo it. However, this time around, that old stoke Xie Bai Yang is an elite Do Zong. It is extremely troublesome even for me to undo it. The little fairy doctor hesitated for a moment before speaking in an ashamed manner. A killing intent that soared to the sky surged from Medusa's body once the little fairy doctor's voice sounded. This killing intent was extremely dense. Even with the little fairy doctor's mental fortitude, her face also involuntarily changed. Old Stoke, hand over the antidote. Medusa's smooth hair moved despite the absence of any wind. Her body flashed, and she appeared beside the vicious-faced Xie Bai Yang. Her delicate hand grabbed his throat as a dark, cold voice that seemed to come from the depths of hell was emitted. This content of novelfulelbook.com. If you're reading this content, please go to website novelfulelbook.com to continue reading. Fastest update hourly. He the old me will not be able to live for long after having used the demon poison spot. I will not be lonely now that this brat will accompany me. Xie Bai Yang laughed dryly as he looked at Medusa's eyes that were filled with killing intent. Medusa's face was ice cold. Her delicate hand grabbed Xie Bai Yang's shoulder and suddenly pulled. Fresh blood flew all over the place. The latter's arm was just pulled off. Are you going to speak? There is still your legs if your hands are gone. Should your legs be gone, I can still help you to cut open your stomach. Medusa's voice was still ice cold and void of emotion even after breaking his arm off. The intense pain caused Xie Bai Yang to emit a hissing suction sound from his mouth. His forehead was covered with cold sweat. However, he still clenched his teeth and said with a sharp voice, "Are all of you very angry that he is coming to accompany this old me? Ha ha, I want this kind of effect." A cold glint flashed in Medusa's eyes. Her leg kicked one of Xie Bai Yang's knees. The sound of bones breaking could be heard. The more ruthless you are to me, the more I will be aware of this brat's high position in your heart. Ha ha, in this way, you will be more miserable. The killing intent on Medusa's face had already turned into a cruel one. She swung her foot, and the other knee belonging to Xie Bai Yang was broken. Both of his legs were curled at strange angle. His entire body was no longer like that of a human. The breath from Xie Bai Yang's mouth grew increasingly weaker under this ruthless torture by Medusa. However, the smile on his face grew increasingly denser. The killing intent in Medusa's heart once again surged when she saw that smile on his face. Her voice was sinister as she coldly said, "After you die, I will let everyone from the 10,000 Scorpion Gate accompany you in death. I will definitely not let even a single dog of your 10,000 Scorpion Gate off." These words of Medusa that were filled with a dense killing intent finally caused the smile on Xie Bai Yang's face to stiffen. A moment later, he slowly shut his eyes. "You can do what you want. This demon poison spot is something that even the user is unable to undo. Hence, even I don't have any antidote." The little patience within Medusa's heart was finally covered by the killing intent that came from all directions. A fierce glint flashed across her eyes. Her delicate hand was just like a blade that was inserted into Xie Bai Yang's chest. She suddenly clenched her delicate hand and his heart immediately burst apart. The remaining life force in Xie Bai Yang's face gradually withdrew when his heart burst apart. A moment later, he transformed into an ice-cold corpse. Medusa slowly withdrew her hand and randomly threw aside Xie Bai Yang's corpse. The long hair behind her danced while fresh blood dripped down from her hand. Her figure seemed to be one that had just walked out of hell. The killing intent that spread from Medusa's body increased instead of decreasing after having killed Xie Bai Yang. Her long, pretty eyes slowly slid to the entrance of the 10,000 Scorpion Gate below. A killing intent that surged to the sky caused everyone from the 10,000 Scorpion Gate to feel as though they were in an ice house. A helpless cry sounded just as Medusa, who had bright red eyes, was preparing to start a massacre. "Kaylin, come back. Medusa's lovely body shook upon hearing this familiar cry. Only then did the bright redness in her eyes weaken a little. She struggled for a moment before finally turning around and rushing to the position in the sky where Xiao Yan was located. Xiao Yan let out a bitter smile and sighed when he saw Medusa clenching her teeth in front of him. He took out a cloth from his storage ring and rubbed off the fresh blood that was on her delicate hand. Let's go. I will bring you back to the Jioma Empire. If he is unable to help you expel the poison, I will bring you to the continent to find someone to help you. Medusa grabbed Xiao Yang's hand as she suddenly declared. Xiao Yang was startled. He looked at her somewhat ordinary appearance formed by that mysterious beast skin. His heart felt touched. She was actually able to do things to such an extent just for him. The person who specializes in using poison is here. Where else are you going to look? Xiao Yang vaguely smiled. He threw away that cloth, turned to the little fairy doctor and asked, is there really no method to resolve this? The little fairy doctor tightly knit her brows. She mused for a long while before finally shaking her head as she said, I really don't have the ability to undo the demon poison spot that an elite dozong has created. If you are able to find an expert who is one class higher, that person might be able to undo it. A person one class higher than the person who used it. Doesn't that mean that it requires a legendary elite dozon? Xiao Yang frowned and questioned after hearing her response. The corner of the little fairy doctor's mouth carried some bitterness as she nodded. She looked at the tightly frowning Xiao Yang and hesitated for a moment before speaking slowly. This demon poison spot might be extremely poisonous, but it is not without benefits. It contains all of Xie Bai Yang's Do Qi within it. If you are able to endure and resolve it, the enormous amount of Do Qi would be inherited by you. Of course, this is on the precondition that you are able to undo it. How long does this demon poison spot take to completely erupt? Xiao Yang mused for a moment before asking an extremely important question. The little fairy doctor hesitated once again. Finally, she helplessly whispered a reply a moment later, half a year. Xiao Yang felt somewhat irritated when he heard the time that was spat out from the little fairy doctor's mouth. Half a year. Where would he go and find an elite dozon to help him undo this demon poison spot during this time? However, you need not be too worried about this. Although I am unable to undo the demon poison spot, I have the ability to greatly delay its eruption time. The little fairy doctor mused for a moment upon seeing Xiao Yang's expression. Finally, she spoke with a shamed expression. If she had not invited Xiao Yang over, it was likely that such a thing would not have occurred. Moreover, she was unable to help settle it after such a problem happened. Xiao Yang sighed in relief only after hearing this. He turned his head to look at Medusa, who was still clenching her silver teeth, and involuntarily laughed. Relax, it's fine. This whatever demon poison spot might even really enable my strength to greatly increase. Medusa would naturally not be bothered about these words that even Xiao Yang himself did not have much confidence in. However, she did not have even the slightest solution at this moment. She could only turn her head and cut the little fairy doctor with her cold eyes. From how she thought of it, if the latter was able to finish off Xie Bai Yang while they were still within the greyish-purple spatial cage, it was likely that there would not be these troublesome matters that followed. The little fairy doctor did not voice a retort in the face of Medusa's icy-cold eyes. The matter of Xiao Yang being poisoned did indeed have quite a lot to do with her. All right, let's settle the matter here first. After which, we will think of ways to deal with this demon poison spot. Xiao Yang inserted himself between the two women, afraid that the two of them would end up fighting again due to this. After which, he hurriedly laughed. Yes. Little fairy doctor faintly nodded. Her body moved and she rushed down from the sky. Currently, the experts from the 10,000 Scorpion Gate were exhausted from death and injuries. They naturally did not have the slightest ability to resist. Being swallowed by the poisoned sect was something that was expected. Xiao Yang only turned his head to look at Medusa after glancing at little fairy doctor's back. He said, Don't blame her. I am here because of the person from the Hall of Souls. Encountering such matters is merely an accident. Medusa could only sigh as she studied Xiao Yang's serious face. She nodded before immediately asking in a low voice, Are you feeling unwell now? Xiao Yang sensed the interior of his body, frowned and said, it seems that this thing does not pose any problem before it erupts. However, once it does, it is likely that it is extremely fatal, just like the little fairy doctor said. What is your plan? Medusa asked once again. How was it so easy to find an elite dozun? Moreover, even if he did find one, who would help someone undo this demon poison spot for no reason? Looking at this vicious-looking appearance, one could tell that it would require quite a lot of effort in order to undo it. Everything will be all right when the time comes. Let's just settle the problem here before talking about it. Xiao Yan replied somewhat helplessly after hearing her question. Medusa could only sigh when she heard his response. Her eyes glanced down below where the 10,000 Scorpion Gate was located. A killing intent flashed in her eyes. After eliminating some of the stubborn remnants of the 10,000 Scorpion Gate, the faction known as the 10,000 Scorpion Gate could be considered to have been eliminated from the Chuyun Empire. From today on, the poison sect could truly be considered to dominate the Chuyun Empire by itself. There would no longer be any factions who would dare contend with it. After giving instructions for some of the follow-up after this big battle, the little fairy doctor led Xiao Yang's 3-men group and left the Sky Scorpion Mountain range. After which, they swiftly headed to the Sky Poison City where the headquarters of the poison sect was located. The middle of the Sky Poison City was the headquarters of the poison sect. Being the headquarters of the poison sect, the defenses of this place were unusually tight. Even an expert of the Do Huang class would definitely not be able to invade it without anyone knowing. This point had been proved many times during these years. A small pool that had formed around black rocks was cradled in the middle of the rock forest. The surroundings of the pool had 4 poisonous snake heads. The enormous snakes' mouths were wide open and their tongues were extended. Dark black liquid oozed out before finally dripping into the pool. The interior of the pool was some extremely dark water. The pool's water was completely black, causing one to be unable to see the bottom. Even spiritual strength would be reflected when it attempted to enter it. A faint fog hovered over the pool. It carried a fishy scent. Clearly, this was a very poisonous thing. There were currently 3 human figures standing around the rock pool. They were all intently observing the naked young man within the rock pool. The poison water in this pool of yours won't harm Xiao Yang, right? Medusa's eyes were observing the black pool of water as she cautiously asked. This pool of poison water is something that I have used over 100 kinds of poisonous plants and insects in order to create. The various poison within it are integrated with each other, which causes it to possess an extremely great amount of energy. The little fairy doctor squatted down, and her delicate hand touched it like an ordinary person. Her hand stirred the poison water that could even corrode a hand. Finally, she softly said, however, poison water is ultimately poison water. The poison contained within it is also extremely potent, but this is what Xiao Yang requires. He is suffering from the vicious demon poison spot. If he trains in this pool along with my guidance, it is possible to fight poison with poison and temporarily suppress the demon poison spot in his body. This would achieve the effect of delaying the time for when the demon poison spot will completely erupt. Hearing this, Medusa glanced at Xiao Yang in the pool who had his eyes shut. At this moment, nothing appeared to be wrong with the latter. Only then did she sigh in relief. The little fairy doctor slowly walked to the other side of the pool. Her pretty eyes looked at the black spot on Xiao Yang's chest. At this moment, some grayish-purple small dots had appeared around the black spot. These small dots were suppressing the demon poison spot until it was forced to spread at a much slower pace. The little fairy doctor gently sighed in relief when she saw this. Her eyes immediately flicked to the top Xiao Yang head, and observed the faint white fog that was slowly rising from it. After which, she sensed the high temperature that was being emitted from Xiao Yang's body. She said, the situation is a little better than what I expected. There is the presence of a heavenly flame in Xiao Yang's body. Although it is impossible to resolve the demon poison spot, it is able to help hinder the poison. Adding this pool of poison water, it is likely that the demon poison spot will be suppressed for an even longer time. Medusa and Zi Yang sighed in relief when they heard this. The former mused for a moment before inquiring, is it all right like it is now? The little fairy doctor shook her head slightly and said, the poison water is merely entering Xiao Yang's body without any will. This is insufficient. It must be directed in order to completely suppress the demon poison spot. Then what are you dawdling for? Hurry up and do it. Medusa knit her brows. She seemed to be quite dissatisfied with the way the little fairy doctor was still dawdling in this place. The little fairy doctor immediately curled her mouth when she heard this. She was planning to retort, but was afraid of waking Xiao Yan. All she could do was coldly snort and say, "What are you pressing for? One must wait for an opportunity in order to channel the poison. What is the point of rushing? Has the opportunity arrived yet?" Medusa was similarly afraid of disturbing Xiao Yang. Hence, she did not dare to argue with the little fairy doctor despite holding many grudges against the little fairy doctor. The little fairy doctor helplessly nodded her head upon being pressed by Medusa in this manner. She immediately seemed to have thought of something, and an alluring bright redness suddenly surfaced onto her face. The back of her teeth bit her lower red lip before she said, "Both of you should leave first. Wait outside of the rock forest." The large and small beauties immediately threw doubtful eyes at her the moment they heard this. Medusa crossed her hands in front of her chest, and did not have the slightest intention of leaving. She indifferently said, "What shameful acts are there? I must be here to ensure Xiao Yang's safety. Who knows what kind of tricks you will pull?" The little fairy doctor was a little anxious when she heard Medusa's doubtful words. However, when her eyes swept over Xiao Yang in the pool, who had his eyes tightly shut, she immediately clenched her teeth and replied, "Forget it, it's up to you. You can remain if you want to." The little fairy doctor immediately stood up when her voice sounded. She hesitated for a moment and her delicate hands gently undid the buttons of her clothes. She gently bit her lower lip and a lovely, well-proportioned, naked body with skin as white as an elephant's tusk was revealed in front of Medusa's and Ziyang's stunned eyes. A rarely seen bright redness involuntarily appeared on Medusa's face when she saw the little fairy doctor's action. She let out a soft cough, before immediately turning her body around as though nothing had happened. While she turned, she also pulled Ziyang around, who had been secretly watching through the gaps between her fingers that were covering her eyes. After which, she headed toward the rock forest. Fortunately, they are not as big as my adult form." Ziyang secretly laughed while being dragged by Medusa. Medusa increased the pace of her footsteps when these words sounded. An embarrassed look surfaced on the face of the little fairy doctor, who was by the pool. However, she merely clenched her silver teeth, after watching the two human figures swiftly disappearing. The little fairy doctor cut the black poison water with her legs after having withdrawn her gaze from the exit. Her movements were as though she was a mermaid who was about to get in the water. She appeared extremely lovely. Just when she was about to enter the pool, she suddenly sensed something, and raised her eyes. Immediately, she saw bright eyes from the pool that similarly carried a thread of shock. The eyes of the two intertwined with each other, and the little fairy doctor's face instantly became boiling hot. The pool of water not far away emitted a ripple while Xiao Yang was feeling embarrassed. Immediately, a somewhat bright red alluring face rose from the pool. However, the little fairy doctor only revealed her head this time around. The remaining parts of her body were completely covered by the dark black water in the pool. The face of the little fairy doctor still contained a faint redness from her embarrassment when it was revealed. If the people from the poison sect were to see her obedient, womanly manners, it was likely that they would be so shocked that their jaws would fall. Who would expect this sky poison woman, whose fierce reputation within the Chuyun Empire could frighten anyone who heard it, could actually reveal such a moving, lovely blush? What are you doing? Xiao Yang dryly laughed as he glanced at the little fairy doctor's rebuking eyes in an awkward manner. The little fairy doctor felt speechless when she heard this. She rolled her eyes at Xiao Yang and snapped, "What am I doing? I am helping you suppress the demon poison spot. Xiao Yang continued to dryly laugh as he rubbed his head. He actually felt somewhat restrained. This was the first time in his life that he was facing a naked woman in a pool. The little fairy doctor rejoiced upon seeing Xiao Yang's rare embarrassment. She immediately let out a soft laugh. Xiao Yang felt somewhat absent-minded when he saw her beautiful lips ripple into a smile. Such a gentle smile was as moving as it was back in Qingshan town. "You still look better when you smile," Xiao Yang quietly commented. The little fairy doctor was startled. She immediately lowered her eyes as a delicate jade-like arm was extended from the pool. It randomly cut through the pool water as she softly said, I am called the Sky Poison Woman in this Chuyun Empire. In the future, I will forever be unable to make contact with anyone as long as the hidden danger of the woeful poison body is still present. The woeful poison body will gain an increasing harm to the people around me as it approaches the time it will completely erupt. The little fairy doctor faintly smiled. She forcefully braced her attention as her delicate arm danced. Like a beautiful mermaid, she slowly arrived in front of Xiao Yang. Her pretty eyes stared at the demon poison spot on Xiao Yang's chest before nodding. She said, "The speed the demon poison spot is spreading has already slowed a lot. With the ability of this pool of poison water, it should not be able to have an obvious effect. There are 3 kinds of heavenly flames within my body. An ordinary lethal poison does not have much effect on me. This demon poison spot might not be in this category, but the 3 kinds of heavenly flame at the very least pose some obstruction to it." Xiao Yang laughed. "A heavenly flame is indeed mysterious. It is actually even able to suppress a demon poison spot left behind by an elite dozong to such an extent. No wonder it is a powerful force that is most coveted by people on this continent." The little fairy doctor nodded her head while feeling surprised. She immediately voiced her thoughts. "However, this is still insufficient. Next, I will use my body as a channel, allowing the poison in the pool to pass through my body and conduct a complete suppression of the demon poison spot. This way, it should be able to help you achieve sufficient time to go and look for an elite dozun to help you remove the poison." Xiao Yang slightly nodded. He said in a deep voice, "In that case, I will trouble you. Do you need to be so courteous?" The little fairy doctor rebuked Xiao Yang with a stare. A bright redness surfaced on her face as she whispered, "Close your eyes. Do not open them without my permission." Xiao Yang understood her when he heard her command. He laughed before slowly shutting his eyes. The little fairy doctor only sighed in relief after seeing Xiao Yang shut his eyes. Her delicate hand swung in front of her while the back of her teeth gently bit her lower red lip. Only then did she slowly stand up in the pool. A naked body that was as white as an elephant's tusk surfaced from the pool. The dark black water followed her alluring lines as it slowly rolled down. Finally, it dripped into the pool, forming circular ripples. The little fairy doctor's body was completely exposed in front of Xiao Yang, who had his eyes tightly shut. Even though he currently had his eyes shut, the little fairy doctor still felt that her face seemed to be burning like a flame. It was so hot that it was frightening. Taking a couple of deep breaths, she suppressed that strange feeling in her heart. The little fairy doctor's hands slightly trembled and a small suction appeared from within her body. Immediately, with her body as the center, a vortex appeared in the pool. As the vortex turned quicker and quicker, a thread of pitch-black poison sudden was absorbed into the little fairy's body. Under her control, it sped through her body and finally agglomerated on her long finger. The little fairy doctor's delicate, jade-like finger transformed into a dark black color. Her face was somewhat solemn as a fingernail gently pressed against the finger that had already turned a dark black color. The little fairy doctor's face changed slightly upon seeing this vicious attack. Her delicate fingers danced at an increased pace. In the end, numerous after-images were formed. The lethal poison in the black line collided with that seal an instant later. However, this time around it was not reflected back. This lethal poisonous black line contained an extremely great amount of do qi. Under the support of this large amount of do qi, the lethal poison in the black line tore at the seal in a brutal manner. Finally, it became like a huge savage snake as it rushed at the seal. The little fairy doctor's eyes were icy cold as she watched the layers of seals get torn apart by the lethal poison of the black line. Her finger was suddenly flicked just before they were completely broken. The drop of woeful poison blood on the tip of her finger rushed out before being scattered on that mysterious seal. That seal immediately unleashed a bright red color as the woeful poison blood was poured in. A countless number of black lines wiggled. They formed a dragonette shape. The hand seal of the little fairy doctor was instantly completed when that thread of black line broke through. Immediately, the seal around the demon poison spot emitted a bright red glow that completely secured the demon poison spot within it. Once the seal was completed, the little fairy doctor discovered that the lethal poison of the black line was fleeing. Her face immediately changed. Just when she was planning to destroy this thread of fleeing demon poison spot, she was surprised to discover that the temperature on the surface of Xiao Yang's body had become much hotter. A faint cluster of jade-green flames appeared around that black line, which was randomly fleeing. The flame completely wrapped around the black line. From the looks of it, the flame seemed intent on refining the latter. That black line began to wildly churn upon being fiercely burned by that jade-green flame. The enormous amount of Do Chi contained within it began to be revealed. This fellow, he is actually thinking of refining the Do Chi within this thread of demon poison spot into his own. Surprise immediately rushed through the little fairy doctor's pretty eyes when she saw this scene. Immediately, she let out a sigh of relief within her heart. From the looks of the situation, it seemed that the heavenly flame within Xiao Yang's body still had the ability to refine a line of fleeing poison despite not being able to completely refine the demon poison spot. Although this thread of demon poison spot is extremely tiny, the Do Chi that it contained in it is extremely pure. If he is able to refine it, it might be able to raise his strength. This fellow is really bold. Xiao Yang's attention was focused on the dark black poison line's color, which was gradually turning pale. He also possessed some understanding of this so-called demon poison spot. This thing was indeed as the little fairy doctor had described. It was extremely dark and poisonous. With his current Do Huang strength, it was indeed extremely difficult to remove. However, by looking at what the glazed lotus heart flame was currently doing, he was not totally without the ability to resist this so-called demon poison spot. The glazed lotus heart flame formed from the combination of two heavenly flames was able to refine the poison of this demon poison spot. Although the speed of this refinement was extremely slow and its target was merely a tiny poison line, this glazed lotus heart flame was at the very least able to refine it. Hence, Xiao Yang's heart quietly made a conjecture that if another heavenly flame was to merge with his glazed lotus heart flame, attempting to refine the entire demon poison spot might not be too difficult. Of course, the degree of difficulty in attempting to merge another heavenly flame was not any less than finding an elite Dozun to lend a hand and remove the poison. This Do Chi continent was so huge. Yet, a heavenly flame was very rare. Finding it was an extremely lucky thing. Moreover, even if one found it, attempting to refine it was extremely difficult. Additionally, a heavenly flame was not something that was only used by an alchemist. If those experts who practiced fire affinity Do Chi, as well as those who used similar tactics, were able to refine it, they would be able to use it. Hence, there were many experts who had the ability to refine a heavenly flame on the Do Chi continent. Who did not covet it? Once word of a heavenly flame spread, it was likely that it would invite experts from all directions with the aim of snatching it. It would be even more difficult to successfully obtain the heavenly flame from these experts. The entry of his consciousness was almost unhindered. The instant he entered, Xiao Yang obtained authority over this pure Do Chi. He forcefully suppressed the joy within his heart. His consciousness moved, and he directed this pure Do Chi along the route of the flame mantra Chi method. It swiftly began to circulate. The circulating speed became faster following the increase in the intensity of the pure Do Chi cycle. In the end, it appeared like an energy hurricane within his body as it carried a strange whistling sound. This kind of energy hurricane did not bring about any discomfort to Xiao Yang. Instead, thick liquid droplets of pure Do Chi scattered wherever the energy hurricane passed. An extremely comfortable feeling spread out from deep within Xiao Yang's bones wherever that pure Do Chi dripped. This caused him to involuntarily let out a groan. The hurricane arrived quickly and disappeared quickly. It slowly vanished after 30+ drops of thick liquid Do Chi were scattered. The pure Do Chi gradually became pale. It spread all over Xiao Yang's body before finally dispersing. Xiao Yang's eyes were tightly shut while he was in the rock pool. The water in the pool had already fallen from his shoulders to his waist. Moreover, the black poison water seemed like boiling water as numerous bubbles appeared. Each time a bubble burst, it emitted a dense poison fog. The little fairy doctor stood prettily by the side of the rock pool. She had already put on her garments. Her pretty eyes that were studying the black water within the pool as she displayed a helpless expression. It was unexpected that the heavenly flame within Xiao Yang's body was actually this terrifying. The temperature that it emitted when it was refining the demon poison spot line had boiled this pool of valuable poison water, causing some of it to evaporate. The little fairy doctor hurriedly shifted her eyes away when she saw Xiao Yang leap out of the pool. Her mouth hurriedly scolded, why aren't you putting on your clothes? Xiao Yan was embarrassed to discover that his entire body was naked. He let out a dry laugh, and hurriedly took out some clothes from his storage ring, before pulling them onto his body in a chaotic manner. The little fairy doctor only turned her eyes back after Xiao Yan had finished putting on his clothes. Her delicate hand pulled back her long white hair that had drifted over her forehead. Her face still revealed some remnant redness. However, a moment later she steadied her mind. Her pretty eyes observed Xiao Yan's body before she curiously asked, "How much did your strength increase after refining that thread of demon poison spot line that tried to escape?" Xiao Yan sensed himself for a moment before laughing, "Not much. Currently, I am merely at the peak of a 2-star Do Huang. It is sufficient. Advancing too quickly is not a good thing. In any case, the demon poison spot is in your body. Once you have the ability in the future, you can completely refine it. At that time, your strength will greatly soar." The little fairy doctor laughed. The smile on her face seemed to appear more often when the two of them were alone together. Xiao Yang smiled and nodded. He clearly understood just how difficult it was to raise one's strength by 1 star at the Do Huang class. Many people had difficulty achieving an advancement even after training for a year. Therefore, increasing his strength by 1 star after refining a thread of demon poison spot line had already exceeded his expectations. "I wonder if I can reach the peak of the Do Huang class, if I completely refine it." Xiao Yang's hand rubbed the demon poison spot on his chest as he quietly laughed in his heart. Suddenly, he felt as though he did not despise or resist this thing as much as he had before. "This is the poison sealing method that I have learned from the 7-colored poison book that I obtained back when we were in the cave at the Qingshan town. Adding this to the heavenly flame that is helping you, it is likely that this demon poison spot will not erupt during these next 2 years." The little fairy doctor softly explained as she watched Xiao Yang. "In other words, you must find an elite dozun to help remove the poison within 2 years. Otherwise, the seal will automatically disappear at that time and the demon poison spot will completely erupt." The little fairy doctor's face became a little solemn when she spoke these words. I know." Xiao Yang nodded slightly. He did not mention that he might be able to refine this demon poison spot if he could find a third kind of heavenly flame. After all, the difficulty of finding a third heavenly flame was not any less than searching for an elite dozun to lend a hand. Xiao Yang immediately knit his brows together when he thought until this point. The Do Chi continent was so huge. Where would he go to search for Feng Zunja? Should he really release rumors that he was Yao Zunja's, Yao Chen's disciple? At that time, it was likely that before Feng Zunja arrived, he would have drawn the Hall of Souls as well as some enemies of Yao Lao in the past. Such an ending would be quite terrible. Xiao Yang did not make any headway no matter how he thought. He could only shake his head and helplessly smile at the little fairy doctor, who was staring at him. After which, he asked, "Where are Kailin and Ziyang?" "They are outside." The little fairy doctor faintly smiled. She immediately took a couple of gentle steps, and her graceful body slowly walked toward the rock forest outside. "Let's go. Since the sealing of the demon poison spot is complete, it will be detrimental for you to remain here." Xiao Yang nodded when he heard this. This place was filled with poisonous vapors. Although any ordinary poison that entered his body would be incinerated by the glazed lotus heart flame until nothing remained, remaining here for a long time did indeed possess no benefits for him. Xiao Yang and the little fairy doctor had just walked to the rock forest when Medusa and Ziyang, who were guarding at the exit, sensed him. They hurriedly came over and sighed in relief as their eyes looked at Xiao Yang's somewhat good expression. "Is it settled?" Medusa swiftly walked forward. Her long pupils swept over Xiao Yang's body while her voice inquired in a concerned manner. "How long will the eruption of this demon poison spot be delayed after being sealed?" Medusa pretended not to be aware of the words of Xiao Yang spoke. Instead, she frowned and asked the most important question. Xiao Yang could only helplessly shake his head when he heard this. Why did this woman like to be so blunt all the time? "The seal will remain for 2 years. The little fairy doctor, by the side, hesitated a moment before choosing to open her mouth first. 2 years. The frown of Medusa's brows deepened. She sighed, "In other words, We must find an elite Dozun to help Xiao Yang remove the poison, or the demon poison spot will once again erupt. Are you able to seal it again 2 years from now? Medusa asked in a deep voice. No. This kind of sealing method can only be used once. It will not have much of an effect if it is used a second time. The little fairy doctor paused for a moment before speaking with a bitter smile. Medusa's eyebrows were vertical. Looking at her manner, it seemed that Medusa was planning to coldly reprimand the little fairy doctor again. Xiao Yang hurriedly inserted himself between the two upon seeing this. He helplessly said, "It is useless to say anything now. Let's have a proper discussion on how we can find an elite Dozun instead. Little fairy doctor, help us arrange some accommodations. Kaylin and Zi Yang have participated in a big battle and need to properly recuperate." The little fairy doctor would naturally not refuse such a request. She softly responded to Xiao Yang before turning her body to leave. From the looks of her manner, she was planning on personally going to prepare their accommodations. Xiao Yang finally turned his head to Medusa after seeing that the little fairy doctor's back had become distant. He bitterly laughed. "She has already given me enough help. You should stop finding trouble with her." Medusa was non-committal in the face of Xiao Yang's preaching. She raised her pretty eyes and said, "What do you plan on doing now? You can't just sit and wait, right? Let's wait and see first. We'll rest for a day before prying some information about the Hall of Souls from this fellow's mouth tomorrow." Xiao Yang spread his hands before immediately rubbing his storage ring. A dense coldness flashed across his dark black eyes. The aim of traveling to the Chuyuan Empire this time around was to capture a person from the Hall of Souls and obtain some information related to the Hall of Souls, or Yao Lao. Medusa hesitated for a moment when she heard this. Finally, she could only sigh and nod her head. Heavenly flame. Xiao Yang's finger gently tapped on his knees as he softly muttered. His eyes stared at a flickering flame. A moment later, his finger trembled and a couple of tattered maps, which were filled with ancient auras, appeared in Xiao Yang's hand. The look of these maps was one of extreme age. Clearly, they had existed for a very long time. The edge of one of the tattered map contained some blurry lines. The lines slowly spread. At a rough glance, they were surprisingly a strange black lotus. The lotus was dark black in color. It seemed that there was a thin layer of black flames covering the surface of the lotus, giving it an exceptionally demon-like appearance. Xiao Yang's eyes were staring intently at the black lotus drawing. His heart suddenly pounded. The current him was no longer that ignorant young man from back then. Hence, he clearly knew what kind of terrifying thing this was. The purifying demonic lotus flame, 3rd in rank. Each of the heavenly flame on the heavenly flame ranking had their own unique properties. Of course, just like how people had long and short hands, the heavenly flames naturally had those that were stronger and those that were weaker when they were compared with each other. The first kind of heavenly flame that Xiao Yang had was the green lotus core flame, which was ranked 19th on the ranking list. On top of possessing an extremely wild and violently high temperature, this kind of heavenly flame seemed to also be able to ignite a volcanic eruption. Of course, until now, Xiao Yang had never done something like this. Hence, he was also unaware of whether this was really true. The second heavenly flame he possessed was naturally the fallen heart flame, which was ranked 14th. This kind of invisible flame was similar to the green lotus core flame in terms of strength. However, it was superior in its bizarre uses. Of course, it also possessed a unique ability that caused one's eyes to turn red with envy. That was the ability to help people refine the Do Qi in their body to increase their training speed. Ever since he had learned of the heavenly flame ranking, the heavenly flame, with the highest ranking that Xiao Yang had seen was the bone-chilling flame of Yao Lao, which was ranked 11th on the heavenly flame ranking. This thing was far more powerful than Xiao Yang's 2 heavenly flames in terms of destructive strength. Perhaps only the glazed lotus heart flame, that was formed from the merger of these 2 heavenly flames could contend with it. Xiao Yang had never seen any heavenly flame ranked above that flame. He was completely unaware of the names of those heavenly flames and the special abilities that they possessed. The 11th ranked bone-chilling flame already possessed such a frightening, destructive strength. It was difficult to imagine just how frightening the strength of the 3rd ranked purifying demonic lotus flame. According to what Yao Lao had said back then, this purifying demonic lotus flame, was something that even he had never seen. There was no rumors of anyone having possessed this kind of heavenly flame during these many years. A flame at this level seemed to basically be non-existent. Xiao Yan really did not know just how the person who recorded the heavenly flame ranking had obtained news of these mysterious heavenly flames and was able to rank their names from there. You plan to head to the Black Corner region? Medusa inquired with some surprise. She was startled when she heard Xiao Yang's plans. Yeah. Xiao Yang smiled and nodded. He said, the headmaster of the inner academy is an elite dozun. If I am able to meet him, I might be able to ask him to help. This content of novelfulelbook.com. If you're reading this content, please go to website novelfulelbook.com to continue reading. Fastest update hourly. That old fellow is always missing. In all my years at the inner academy, I have only seen him once. Even if you go, you might not be able to meet him. Ziyang by the side curled her mouth when she replied. I must at least give it a try, right? Moreover, even if I am unable to meet him, I will also be able to inquire about some information relating to the heavenly flames from the first elder. If I am able to find another type of heavenly flame, I will not need anyone's help in undoing this demon poison spot. Xiao Yang vaguely smiled in an unconcerned manner as he responded, all right. There is more trouble in the Black Corner region than within the Jioma Empire. Do you need me to follow? Medusa mused for a moment before nodding her head and asking a question. Although you will be of much help if you follow me, the Yang Alliance and the Snake People tribe will no longer be guaranteed their safety should you leave. Hence, I can only trouble you to help me protect the Yang Alliance and the members of the Xiao clan this time around. Xiao Yang hesitated for a moment before speaking with a solemn expression. The people from the Hall of Souls seemed to have not given up their plans for the Xiao clan. If all of them left, it was likely that the members of the Xiao clan would be in danger should the people from the Hall of Souls make their way to the Jioma Empire, which did not have the protection of an elite dozong. Medusa knit her brows when she heard this. She was not really reassured, especially allowing Xiao Yang to head to the danger-filled Black Corner region alone. However, what Xiao Yang had said was true. The current Yang Alliance needed the presence of an elite dozong. Why don't I accompany you? The poison sect no longer has any opponents within the Chuyun Empire. It should not be much trouble for me to leave for a period of time. The quiet little fairy doctor by the side suddenly suggested, when she saw the worry on Medusa's face. Xiao Yang was startled. He immediately became somewhat hesitant. He would naturally gain a lot of advantages if an elite dozong like the little fairy doctor followed him. However, she did have an enormous poison sect to manage. My woeful poison body might erupt any time. If you leave for too long, who will come and help me control it even if all the ingredients have been found? The little fairy doctor involuntarily smiled and continued to explain, when she saw Xiao Yang's hesitation, this all right. Thank you very much. Xiao Yang naturally ceased hesitating since the other party had spoken to such an extent. He immediately nodded, cupped his hands, and smiled to the little fairy doctor. He naturally understood that the little fairy doctor had the intention of protecting him by following him. Medusa quietly sighed in relief when she saw that the little fairy doctor had taken the initiative to say that she would follow Xiao Yang. The gaze she used to look at the latter was slightly gentler. She clearly knew that the little fairy doctor possessed a strength that was similar to hers. Xiao Yang should not have too much trouble with her tagging along. Let me take this little girl too. I must at least let First Elder and the others see that I did not mistreat her, since I will also be returning to the Jiunan Academy. Xiao Yang patted Ziyang's head only to end up being dodged by the unwilling girl. Medusa faintly smiled and nodded. Although Ziyang's strength was only that of a Do Huang, that frightening strange strength of hers was something that even an expert Do Huang would have difficulty contending against. She could also be considered quite the help. In that case, when will you be leaving? Medusa looked at Xiao Yang as she slowly asked. We will leave tomorrow. Now, Xiao Yang smiled. He immediately flicked his finger, and a jade bottle with an invisible flame sealing its mouth appeared in his hand. He looked at the jade bottle. Some coldness flashed across his eyes as he slowly said, now, we should pry some information regarding the Hall of Souls from this fellow's mouth. Medusa's and the little fairy doctor's eyes swept over the jade bottle in Xiao Yang's hand, causing their eyes to slightly solidify. Immediately, They placed themselves with one at the front and the other behind, completely sealing the interior of this room. They felt some fear within their heart for that so-called protector Tai of the Hall of Souls. Xiao Yan laughed upon seeing the reaction of these two people. His hand rubbed the bottle's mouth. The fluctuation of the invisible flame gradually became pale before finally disappearing. An illusionary soul immediately rushed out following the scattering of the flame. Finally, he shot toward the ceiling without any care for his life. An invisible fire wall suddenly appeared on the ceiling as Xiao Yang flicked his finger. That illusionary spiritual body knocked into it and immediately emitted a kai-kai sound. A sharp miserable cry subsequently appeared. Xiao Yang observed the illusionary spiritual body, which was covering his head in panic. He smiled faintly as the seal on his hand moved. That invisible fire wall rushed down and accurately wrapped around the soul before slowly descending. Protector Tai, why do you need to run so quickly? Xiao Yang spoke before he smiled and studied Protector Tai, who was carefully hiding within the flame. He did not dare allow his body to touch even a little of the surrounding fire wall. Just what do all of you want? Our protectors from the Hall of Souls have a spiritual imprint in the Hall of Soul. They will definitely sense it if you kill me. At that time, the enforcement unit of the Hall of Souls will definitely not let all of you off. Protector Tai glared at Xiao Yang's group furiously as he roared, I am only asking a couple of questions. As long as Protector Tai replies honestly, I will naturally not kill you. Xiao Yang was non-committal with regards to Protector Tai's threat, as he spoke with a smile. A light flashed across Protector Tai's eyes when he heard this. He immediately laughed, what do you wish to ask? Give me some information that is related to the Hall of Souls. Xiao Yang sat on a chair as he softly asked, information related to the Hall of Souls. Protector Tai was startled. His gaze was surprised as he looked at Xiao Yang. An ordinary person could not help but want to avoid them. It was unexpected that this fellow had actually taken the initiative to inquire about information. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.